And for a closer look at the global economic outlook, I want to bring in William Lee, Chief Economist at the Milken Institute. Thanks so much to have you with us. I really appreciate it.
Great to be here.
Great. So obviously, a lot of people say, look, we saw this coming with the IMF. We've already had one contracting quarter in the US. You've seen slowdown in demand. What's your reaction to this lowered growth forecast?
Well, not only did we see it coming, we also saw that it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Right.
And the IMF is just acknowledging that by revising down their forecast for growth and up their forecast for inflation, because the war in Ukraine, I think, is taxing everyone's ability to estimate how that supply chain is going to come back together again. Food security has become much more insecure. Energy prices have just become higher and higher.
Yeah, and what they didn't seem to have a handle on is inflation. Obviously, they admitted that it's more persistent than they thought. But is it going to get worse before it gets better in terms of price stabilization? They didn't really seem to have an idea on that.
Well, many people claim that they're starting to see some pieces of inflation start to turn. Gasoline prices, for example, in the United States have started to come down. But I think what we are most afraid of as economists would be the spread of inflation into these sticky areas called core inflation,
right.
Rents, service, auto mechanics service prices, the price of medical care will start to increase as well. And those are the things that are much harder to bring back down again once they start going.
Has the impact of the war in Ukraine been overblown, and also the impact of COVID? Do we have a long tail COVID? Is the war a distraction in which some countries like Washington can sort of point the finger and go, this is why things are like they are?
Well, I only wish that the war in Ukraine was being over-exaggerated, because the emerging market countries who are most dependent upon imports of wheat from Ukraine are suffering with exorbitantly high food prices, but also a shortage of food. Many emerging market countries are on the brink of starvation, and I think that is no exaggeration at all.
Also, William, what's further down in the report? Other takeaways that Owen, despite his analysis, may not have had time to put in that sort of raised your eyebrows?
I think one thing that we should all keep in mind is that the conversion from fossil fuels to green energy is being emphasized over and over again by the IMF. But it's not that easy, and I think the overemphasis on the speed of that adjustment is very harmful. I think the IMF is underestimating the costs it takes to convert to green energy, and by pushing policies so hard and so fast, it's imposing a lot of costs on middle class around the world.
Well, we had the IMF tip its hat, but of course we have expectations, obviously, for central bank meetings, including here at the Federal Reserve on Wednesday. I mean, we kind of know what they're going to do, but does the IMF add extra weight to that?
I think the IMF warning that the global economy is involved is a red light, as it were, for the central bank tightening. But I think the central banks will read it slightly differently. The reply is going to be the only way to ensure durable, lasting growth is to get inflation back to its 2% target. And every central bank around the world, the United States, the ECB, and emerging markets themselves, are so desperate to get the inflation back that they're willing to tip the world into a recession to get that done quickly.
Well, William Lee, Chief Economist at the Milken Institute, thanks so much for being so eloquent and educational at the same time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.